Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing wonderful. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. The new year is up and running.
It's January 14th and there's still no snow on the ground.
Which is rare for New England, but I'll take it.
Yep.
And that is not the case around the country. There have been some nasty blizzards in the Midwest and even in the South.
Yep. South and North. We're in the dry area, so not complaining at all.
Right, I'll take it.
Last year this time we had ice dams in the rivers and so on and so forth, and barges breaking that stuff up because everything had frozen from the. So it's different every year.
It is. And you know what they say about New England. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. It'll change.
Well, give us 30 today so we can get this podcast in.
All right. And with that segue, whether you work at a full-time job, you're an entrepreneur, you're looking for a job, whatever it is you're doing, at some point you are going to have to present to people. Whether it's a job interview and you're presenting to potential bosses, whether you're in corporate and you're presenting an idea or a report to your coworkers or supervisors, entrepreneurs making sales presentations, sales announcements, we all at one time or another have to present. So today we're going to talk about what you can do to make your presentation memorable, to get over the jitters that so many people have when presenting, and how to put your best foot forward. Now, I think the jitters is a good place to start because that tends to stop so many people from presenting. And I remember years ago, Jerry Seinfeld making a comment.
I saw a study that said speaking in front of a crowd is considered the number one fear of the average person. I found that amazing. Number 2 was death. Death is number 2? This means to the average person, if you have to be at a funeral, you would rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy.
That's a classic, but it is true in a lot of ways.
It is. It's the number one fear. And I think, I've studied a lot of what Steve Jobs did, and there's been a lot written about his presentation style because he was known for fantastic presentations. And the one thing he always stressed over and over again was practice. And he didn't have time to be nervous about it because he spent that time practicing. He knew everything that could go wrong, everything that could go right, how to fix what went wrong on the fly. They had it scripted down to the second. And he rehearsed it over and over again. And I think if you're one of those people that gets very nervous about presenting, that's really the first thing you need to do is script out what you're going to do and practice it. The more comfortable you are with the material, the less likely it is to bother you once you're actually presenting.
Yeah, and absolutely the most important thing to do is prepare properly. I mean, you know your material. It's really, really important to organize it up front, put it together, keep it simple. I mean, there's a lot of tips we're going to be going over today as far as that goes. But if you start out with something more simple, the bottom line is if you're going to be doing a talk about something, people aren't going to remember too much. So what a lot of people say is just give them 3 important things that they can take away, because the more that you're going to go on about different things, the more people are going to forget. So it's really, really important to prepare ahead of time. There's a really, really good book, which I'm sure a lot of you folks have heard about out there. Maybe you haven't heard about the book, but I'm sure everybody out there has heard of TED Talks. And TED Talks are basically 18-minute talks about whatever. And you can go on and just go to tedtalks.com, or you can go into YouTube, and they are all over the place. But there's a book that spawned this It's written by Carmen Gallo, who also wrote the book, he's the best-selling author of the presentation secrets of Steve Jobs, like you talked about. And this is Talk Like TED. And it's 9 public speaking secrets of the world's top minds. And people who have done TED Talks are everybody from Steve Jobs to Pope Francis to Barack Obama and a lot of other people out there. Plus, there's a lot of people who you've never heard of that have done excellent things. And they go from place to place. I don't think they're sponsored by TED, but you can actually do TED Talks in your area where you have a lot of people come just to practice their art. But the way that this is broken up, again, it's 9 public speaking secrets, and they're divided into 3 different types, 3 different categories. Number 1 is emotion, and then number 2 is novel, which is what the content is all about, and then number 3 is memorable. So we can go to the novel part because that's actually your content, and what they're talking about there, the 3 different topics there are: number 1 is teach people something new, and then number 2 is delivering jaw-dropping moments, and this is something that Bill Gates really worked on a lot, and then lightening up. The bottom line is you got to be yourself and not too serious. So it's really, really important to be looking at that stuff. So teaching people something new, Gallo, who's the author of the book, says an unfamiliar, unusual, or unexpected element in a presentation intrigues the audience, jolts them out of their preconceived notions, and quickly gives them a new way of looking at the world. So even if you're looking at some common subject matter, if you have a new way of presenting it, it's a great thing to put into your presentation.
Yeah, especially if you can surprise your audience. Surprise goes a long way. I mean, Steve Jobs was famous for his one more thing, and that was always the surprise. He kept it for the end. But even just the way you present things. I did a presentation just after Donald Trump was elected president. And I started my presentation with, we're going to talk about someone who was elected president controversially, put a lot of his own family members and nepotism in the White House, and was severely criticized for potentially being dangerous. And the upshot of this was I wasn't talking about Donald Trump. I was actually talking about Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But that switch got everybody's attention. So if you can surprise your audience where they think they know what you're going to say, and then it's something different, you've got their attention. And that's the first part of the battle right there, is getting their attention. So it's not just about what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. If you can put a different spin on it, it goes a long way to holding attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I talked about point number 2 under this, and this is called delivering jaw-dropping moments. And this is really putting something that's supercharged into it. And it uses an example of Bill Gates. He wanted to make a point at a TED Talk about the dangers of malaria. And he brought along a jar of mosquitoes. And what Gates said was, malaria is, of course, transmitted by mosquitoes. I brought some here just so you could experience this. We'll let these roam around the auditorium a bit. There's no reason only poor people should have the experience. Now, it was a jaw-dropping moment. Of course, the mosquitoes that he brought posed no threat to the audience, but it was a very, very good way to emotionally charge the audience. And the bottom line is that if you're using that for your delivery, all of a sudden you're having fun up there, not thinking so much about what you're saying, and you got that audience very, very well engaged. It's a great way to make them a little bit more shocked and you a little bit more comfortable, and it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. If you can engage the audience with humor, with a twist, however you can do it, and have fun with it, that right there goes a long way. 1, to making yourself more comfortable on stage. 2, to engaging your audience and keeping their attention. And 3, making sure they're actually listening. And that there is very important, because a lot of speakers lose their audience right at the beginning, either because they go in with something too technical and the audience tunes them out, or the biggest mistake I have seen speakers make is to have a PowerPoint presentation, read from the PowerPoint presentation, and hand out the slides in a handout. I've walked out on speakers who did this, because if all they're going to do is read the slides and they've already given me a copy of them, I don't need to spend the time listening to them. I can read through it at my own pace.
Yeah, and it's very, very boring, obviously. You touched on the importance of putting a little bit of humor into your talk, and that actually is the lighten up point in the novel section of this TED Talks thing. And the bottom line is, humor relaxes people. It lowers defenses. It makes the audience is a lot more receptive to your message. So you got to go in and you got to have fun doing that. So, and with PowerPoint presentations, there's actually a section in there in the book that talks about PowerPoint slides. And this is talking about the memorable part. Point number 2 is to paint a mental picture with multi-sensory experiences, or more simply, just visualize the content. And it talks right there, it says, avoid the trap of word-heavy PowerPoint slides. Show more photos, use different types of media, and it's going to make your presentation a whole lot more interesting. But the bottom line is that PowerPoint should just be there simply with an image or some big word on there to maybe guide you, so that people are focusing on you, because you are the show and they're not. You and I are both very familiar with BNI, which I used to be a BNI instructor and director. And one of the things we talk about in there, which is very, very important, you talked about reading from a PowerPoint presentation. The other thing you do not want to do is pass out your materials so that people are reading them while you are talking. When I have handouts, I always tell people to remind me at the end of the meeting, and I'll give it to them. That engages them too and makes them laugh. But the bottom line is, I don't like people reading stuff while I'm talking, and it's just not a very good way to present at all, because it is boring and it takes people off subject.
Yes, you never want to hand out the presentation ahead of time. It's fine if you've got handouts and you put them out afterwards, or if the handouts are incomplete. Like if you're giving a handout of your PowerPoint presentation, but there's a lot more in your talk than what's on the slides, that's fine. And that actually gives people a place to take notes a lot of times. But you don't want to hand them your entire presentation. Also, that sort of thing tends to lock you in. You want to be able to adapt on the fly. A number of years ago, I was the first male to give a presentation to the Network of Executive Women in Milford, Connecticut. And I had my presentation all set. But when I got there, I had gotten there a little early, and I was approached by no less than 10 members of the restaurant staff asking me if I was sure I was in the right place. This wasn't something I knew was going to happen. It wasn't planned. But I thought that gave me a fantastic intro to the group. So when I went in, instead of the opening I had planned, I swapped it out, thanking them for giving me the honor of being the first male. And I know I'm the first male because everybody in the restaurant wanted to make sure I was in the right place. Being able to take that real world experience that had just happened and pop it